My name is Harry Mann. I'm head of customer experience at Brompton Bicycles. Do you know what Bromptons are? There's an example of one here. It's a little bit muddy because I got a little bit drenched on the way across London this morning, went through a few puddles, although it did prove pretty useful getting from the train station to here because it was about a 2-mile walk, and admittedly I cycled for most of it. On the eve of a GDPR compliant world, you may be wondering what personalization and payments have in common. And over the next 15 minutes or so, I want to take you through the journey that Brompton's been on, and some of the learnings we've garnered on that journey, using personalization to build deeper relationships with our customers, and how that's applied to payment technology. But first, to give you a bit of context, I want to take you through how Brompton's evolved into the company it is today. First founded in 1976, the Brompton story nearly stalled before it even got going. Our founder and inventor, Andrew Ritchie, drew his design up for a fantastic folding bike, but unfortunately he struggled to get any real funding for his invention. He applied to banks and also other British bike manufacturers saying, I've got this fantastic idea. It's like a magic carpet. You take out your pocket, not quite, but you roll it and you unfold it and you seamlessly travel across London. You don't get stuck on the tube, in traffic, and then when you get to your destination, you just fold it up and take it with you. Unfortunately, as this letter and a few others that are dotted around our factory show, they didn't really believe in his idea. And so, not perturbed by this, he set about actually crowdfunding Brompton from the outset. He reached out to his friends and family and said, hey, I'll give you a few bikes if you give me a few quid, and we'll get this thing going. And that's how the company came to life. Now, obviously, there's a certain amount of irony that Raleigh has now left the UK and produces its bikes out in Asia, and Brompton's actually thrived by remaining in the UK. The first 30 years or so of the company were really focused on manufacturing, designing and building and optimizing this design to build the best possible product. Some might say we were absolutely obsessive about it and making sure that we could build it robustly, but also in the minimum package available, so it'd be the most useful for the people using it. As interest grew in Brompton around the world, we started to morph from being a manufacturing company into more of a B2B organization, picking up distribution in countries all over the world. And with our passion for engineering, Brompton currently makes around 50,000 bikes each year, and we distribute 80% of these to over 45 markets around the world. Here's a small glimpse of what we actually do inside of our factory. So whilst our focus has really been on engineering and manufacturing, we hadn't spent too much time thinking about the consumer, and that's led to a rather distorted picture of the brand around the world. For example, as some of our 80s advertising will show you, in Europe we really focused on the consumer, to the extent that some people still think that you have to travel by train in order to own a Brompton. Meanwhile, out in Asia, in Japan, partly due to the distributor out there, but Bromptons are known as a bike for the middle-aged man in his Lycra who will buy the most expensive Brompton he can and ride it only ever at the weekends, and definitely not when it's raining. Meanwhile, out in South Korea, it's a very different vibe. It's much more of a social tool ridden by a much younger generation, and they have crazy two-tone color bikes, and they even have their own Pimp My Brompton Bromptification aftermarket, where they source their own spares and accessories to improve the product. And some might say that even in our own market, we maybe let the brand go a little bit, and the fact that we got stereotyped quite significantly by the BBC in the series W1A goes to show that the interpretation of Brompton was maybe excluding the people that thought that they should be riding a bike, and actually want to be much more inclusive. So in 2014, we took a pretty big step, which was around moving to try and own the company, to be thinking much more as a B2C organization, more than a B2B organization we've become. And being a small British brand, we knew that digital would have a huge role to play in this, in terms of affecting this on a global scale. Now, as you've seen, our bikes are personalised and used in different ways around the world. And it's a major part of the Brompton brand promise that we allow people to personalise our bikes. In fact, any order that hits our production line can be one of 17 million different combinations arranged by the customer. And so that's one bike, personalisable up to 17 million different combinations, something we take quite seriously. When we wanted to build out a digital journey, we thought, hang a second, personalisation has to be at the core of what we do. We started off initially using some pretty basic geo-based personalization, thinking about the imagery and language to make it much more relevant to the Brompton usage in a particular market, as opposed to going for a very much broad brush approach. We then thought about this in terms of how people were experiencing and trialing the bike locally, pushing them towards local trial events. For example, in Asia, these were really focused around social events, where the bike was used, as I said before, as a social tool, whereas in Europe, we much more targeted things like demonstrations at commuter hubs. We also introduced a dealer finding service and allowed people to connect them, the people who are interested in buying a Brompton, to connect them to their nearest dealer so they could experience it further. Using Sitecore, our CMS platform, we took this concept one stage further, and using data from a previous session or in-browser session data, we started to shape the journey you would have on site, giving you different content to where you were in the purchase journey. For example, if someone was a cold prospect to the website, we would serve them content about the benefits of a Brompton and how it can change the way you can really experience the city without having to be, limited by public transport or stuck in traffic all day. For those people who are a bit further on the purchase journey, we looked at people who'd used our bike building tools. They'd actually gone and configured a bike. They were thinking, possibly considering about buying one. And we target them with more rational information, for example, justifying the price due to the handmade quality and the fact they're produced here in the UK. And finally, for people who we identify as an owner, they may be browsing some of the tools and maintenance tips. We serve them interesting content around how potentially they get upgrades to their Brompton, or maybe when they should have it serviced, or potentially the opportunities to use their Brompton, for example, in our 14 series racing series called the Brompton World Championships. Despite offering these experiences as a company, we're still not close enough to the customer in order to really do them service. They'd invested a lot in this product, and we felt they weren't getting the best support. They weren't getting a personalized service from Brompton. And so we took a big step earlier on this year to become transactional online. Prior to this year, we'd never sold a Brompton online direct to consumer. And this was a massive step for us, but one that we believe will allow us to form a much deeper connection with our customers and allow us to personalize the experience to them both during the purchase cycle, but then also afterwards. It wasn't without its challenges, though. In terms of scale, because we had such global reach, we wanted to be transactional across 5 key markets at launch. In terms of speed, we wanted to go live within 3 months. Having not changed our business model for 40 years, suddenly there was a lot of urgency around it. And finally, we wanted to remain true to our brand proposition, giving people a tailored, personalized experience in each market. In selecting Adyen, we had the flexibility to go live in actually 6 regions rather than 5. Even though we only have one platform, we're able to use it in very different cases. As Brompton had grown pretty organically over the last 40 years or so, we'd end up with different business models in different markets. For example, in China, we operate through a joint venture, and therefore we wanted to have the funds relocated to the UK to actually acquire them back in the UK. Whereas in America, we trade under Brompton Inc., and we wanted that money very much to stay in that market to be reinvested. In terms of speed, as soon as we decided that we're going to sell online, our management team got pretty excited, and they want to see the money rolling in, unsurprisingly. And we decided by selecting one payments provider and actually using the client-side encryption on our payment page was a much faster solution. Initially, we set up with just one payment method, and then we were able to add more in as we went along, as the market demanded. The other advantage that we had is a number of different tools we used on the Adyen platform. For example, customizing the fraud screening levels by market, which allowed us to focus on actually delivery rather than worrying about being frauded. And finally, in keeping with the brand's our personalized on-site experience, we're able to deliver a payment experience suited to each market. Now, these guys seem pretty happy about the fact that they're able to use Ideal to pay for their Brompton spares and accessories in the Netherlands. In reality, they had actually cycled from London to Amsterdam and stopped on a few bars along the way. But in China, we've actually taken a different approach, and we wanted to test to see if people would interrupt their social browsing and pay on our WeChat store. So we introduced WeChat payments actually on the native platform to start with, and we managed to convince people to actually buy a bike. They're in the middle of their social day browsing WeChat, and they moved across into our store and actually transacted on WeChat. And we were really surprised because our bikes, due to the import duties, are really expensive in China. Most people are building in China and bringing them back to the UK, but we're going the other way out. And so there's quite a high price premium on our bikes out there. And so it was a real proof point and gave us confidence to then apply WeChat payments to our main website, allowing more users to access it. What we also saw, especially in China, is that people still wanted to use sort of global payment methods, such as Visa and MasterCard, which probably represents the international audience out there. So, in summary, by selecting Adyen, we're achieving our plans to really start to deepen our engagement with consumers by being transactional. It's really a trust thing, but also we're starting to get so much more information, and we really feel that we can help that customer better during the purchase cycle, but then also once they own a Brompton as well. The scalability and speed which we've been able to turn on these e-commerce operations around the world has actually really given us a lot of confidence in terms of our ambition, to the extent that this summer we're launching our first product innovation, our major launch in 40 years, our Brompton Electric, exclusively online. So the only place to buy it will be on our online platform, which is a big risk for the company, but also allows us to really get closer. With a new product, it allows us to own that customer and really give them a much more tailored experience. With this, we really hope to further our mission, which is to improve the way people live in cities and how they get around cities with our little folding bikes. That's it.